Hamilton, please.
Thank you very much, Deputy Presiding Officer. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to speak in this important debate and indeed for the consensus around the government's motion today. My life has been filled with the impact of extraordinary women. Their impression on my world has been profound, and I want to focus on one in particular in my remarks today. In April 1940, my great-aunt Joan worked as Foreign Office intelligence in the British legation to Oslo. She stood side by side with celebrated spy chief Frank Foley, burning intercepts and manifests as Wehrmacht divisions overran that city. A key member of the Foley group, she then helped to rescue the Norwegian government and king and escaped overland by car and by foot through the snow, through Lillehammer and onto the coast. From there, after providing vital communication support to Norwegian resistance, she was evacuated by submarine to Britain and was awarded an MBE in the New Year's Honours list that year for her service. She was only 23 years old. I wish I'd known her. In her short career, she was present at some of the most defining moments in global history. She was part of the delegation to Yalta. I can only imagine the diplomat she would have gone on to become had she not been sadly lost to us when her plane disappeared over the Atlantic on her return journey from the San Francisco Conference, which established the United Nations at the end of the war. When I think about Aunt Joan, I am reminded of the frontiers that she had to push back on as a young woman in a man's world, that in the male-dominated landscape of military intelligence, she was decorated and mentioned in dispatches several times, is testimony to the strength of her character and her resilience. I see that strength in the women in my life today, and I honour them for it. Presiding Officer, in the year that has passed since we last marked this occasion, it has been my great privilege to stand shoulder to shoulder with the Scottish Government and indeed members of all parties in support of the changes we've delivered in advancing women's rights and gender equality, in landmark domestic violence legislation, in the Gender Representation on Public Boards Act, and in the widespread condemnation of the rape clause. But we still have frontiers on which to push back. And in the year to come, I hope we can do more to challenge employers who still engage in maternity discrimination, clothing demands in the workplace, or the gender pay gap, which is measured out as nearly 7% across this country. And I was very glad to be involved in the UCU protest outside at lunchtime, which, among other things, was still talking about the disparity of equal pay in the university and college sector. And I want to see the advances we are making in gender representation on public boards mirrored in the boardrooms of private companies as well. And I want to see a shift in the imbalance that exists between the fact that whilst 50% of graduates in this country are female, only 1/5 of UK companies are either led or owned by women. And let this also be the year when we can finally see a modicum of justice for those women born in the 1950s who are the victims of state pension inequality. Well, I am a feminist, but if I'm honest, I don't think that's always been true. My mother had been in the vanguard of the North American feminist movement in the 1960s and had always brought me up with an understanding of respect and of equality. But when I think back on it, I spent so many of my formative years blissfully unaware of the privilege that I enjoyed as a boy and as a young man, in the stereotypes I conformed to, and in the advantage I accepted without question. I was often a happy beneficiary of the patriarchy. And to my shame, I was at times a passive witness to things like everyday sexism, systemic injustice, and even the harassment so eloquently described by Gillian Martin a few moments ago. I'm not sure when it was that I actually woke up to this, but wake up I did. And over the past 20 years, I've strived to be both a better man and a better feminist, to live up to the example set to me by people like my mother, my aunt, my sisters, and all of the female role models in my life. I have mentored female candidates within my party, helped to steward all women shortlists through its structures, and I've worked for gender balance in the Liberal Democrats to the point where, as director of our national campaign at the Snap general election, I helped to reverse an imbalance which has existed since the inception of my party, when we returned a group of Scottish MPs to Westminster, half of whom were female. But it does not stop there. In every debate such as this, I rise with a not insignificant degree of embarrassment at the reality that I speak for a group made up of parliamentarians that are exclusively male. So I offer this commitment. I will do everything in my power to ensure that the next group of Liberal Democrat parliamentarians return to this place, be it big or small, will look more like the society we seek to represent and less like the Liberal front bench of 1916. International Women's Day affords us the opportunity to reaffirm that shared commitment to gender equality, to take stock of the mountains that we still have to climb in pursuit of that aim, and to recognise that attitudes and complicity, such as those of my younger self, can be turned around. We will hear the words of many great women in today's debate, but I want to leave you with those of a man, Indian movie star Amitabh Bachchan, who, like me, woke up to the iniquities of patriarchy that had benefited him so richly. He said, because you are women, people will force their thinking on you, their boundaries on you. They will tell you how to dress and how to behave, who you can meet and where you can go. Don't live in the shadows of people's judgment. Make your own choices in the light of your own wisdom. Now, I see the spirit and strength of my Aunt Joan and the many great women I'm proud to share this chamber with in those words. And with that, Presiding Officer, I commend the motion to this chamber. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cole.